Hey guys, welcome back to Rock Your Comeback. I'm your host, Nichole Eaton, and I'm here today with Simona Constantini. Simona is the CEO of Costantini Productions, two-time podcast host of the podcast Happiness Happens and the podcast As It Relates to Podcasting, and creator of Podcast in a Box. And I'm ecstatic to have her on. You guys, I met her down in Orlando a couple weeks ago, and I was like, what a bright light, and you guys have to know her. So welcome, Simona.
That is so kind. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you. I honestly loved your energy from the minute that I walked through the door. I was like, oh, I need to know her. And then I found out your name is Nichole and that's my middle name. So I was like, oh, okay. We're just natural friends now.
It's written in the stars. Like,
absolutely.
This is what we're doing. I loved your energy. And I think there's something to be said about somebody who like brightens up a room. And I was telling Simona, like, we're new in this rock your comeback phase. Like, this is I don't want to call it a villain era. What can we call it? I don't know. We have to like find the right name.
I want to say something, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say it on this show, but it could be like your bad B era.
Oh, we're allowed to swear.
Oh, we're allowed to swear. Okay.
Yes. So yeah, your bad bitch era. Like, this is like the reclaiming of your power. And so I thought, when I think of power, a lot of people think of like somebody who's really forceful or like even masculine in their energy. And for me, it's like somebody who's so like wrapped up in their own light that you can feel it from a mile away. So I'm fucking ecstatic to have you on.
I'm so stoked. You know, the first thing, and firstly, thank you so much for having me on. I am genuinely so excited to be here. I adore everything that you do. I love watching all of your content online. My only wish is that we actually got to talk more while we were together in person, but I know that will happen. So I'm really excited about that. Can I share something that came to mind when you said power?
Absolutely.
Okay. The first thing that came to mind when you said that is rooted, because you can't have light without being rooted. You know what I mean? Like, you got to be so firmly planted in order for that to beam out, because it comes from the inside out. So if you're not rooted, it's very hard for that light to shine.
So what are some ways, like when you think of rooting that power, what are some ways that you like to do that or have had learned maybe the hard way that you've had to do that, right?
Nichole, I learned everything the hard way. No, I'm just kidding.
Same girl. That's why we're doing this podcast.
It's all trial and error around here. You know, when I first started out, like, I didn't even realize what energy work was or what healing work was or what even being in your power meant. Like, I didn't know what any of that was. I just knew that I didn't feel like myself. And it's like that age old thing of like, I feel like I'm not where I'm supposed to be and that there could be more. You know what I mean? And there's always that thought of more, especially when you're first starting out. It's like, there's more. I don't know how to get there. I don't know what that more is. So like, let me continue to like follow it. And the tips and things that I learned back then were amazing for that time. And I've evolved them so much now. So back then it was a lot of following what other people told me is the right thing to do. Like, you know, if you want to feel grounded, go stand outside and plant your feet on the ground, or go and, you know, touch a tree, be in nature, be present, meditate, get quiet, get still. The biggest thing that I found that works the best and the fastest for me is to move. So I literally bought a walking treadmill so that when I feel frustrated or anxious or out of alignment or like whatever, I just put my running shoes on and I just start walking. I live in Canada. It's very cold up here. So like, I mean, you can go for a walk outside if you wanted to. I don't want to. So I just bought this thing. I put it underneath my desk and I just walk. And that's like the biggest way that I can start to like move that energy. It helps me feel like way more grounded in turn.
I love that you mentioned that power comes from being rooted. And I think that I have a walking treadmill in my Amazon cart right now that I was like wanting to do some more research, because I've just been feeling called personally to move my body more of like, am I too sedentary? I work from home. I live from home. I work out every day, but just throughout the day, am I moving in a way that feels good? But I love the idea of finding ways you feel powerful. And like, cool thing that you mentioned was that you can grow how you connect and relate to your power as you start to connect and relate to it. So finding ways initially that may work really well, that feel like really intentional, like, oh, so-and-so said, you know, Simona said that she started with grounding on the bare earth. So I'm going to start grounding on the bare earth. And I love that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think really harnessing your power comes with hearing your intuition to know what you need next. And like when I think of like a comeback and I think of power, for me, that's like that internal GPS that we all have guiding us to how to do these things that we have at all times, but we don't always listen to or intentionally access. And I think it sounds like that's what happened for you is you started with, okay, here's what someone told me to do. And then now here's how I do it because it feels aligned and right for me. So I love that.
Thank you. And I love everything that you just said. And what comes from that is this idea of, people are in our lives for a reason. One of my clients says it. She says, reason, season, or teaching, essentially is how she puts it. Yeah. And I know there's so many different ways that you can say that phrase and, or a lifetime or whatever. And one of the things is when you're on any type of journey, whatever it is you're doing, a spiritual journey, healing journey, a business journey, a personal growth journey, like whatever word you want to give it, it's very interesting because you have the perfect people that come along your path at the exact right time you need them. They say that one thing that's going to stick with you and be like, yep, this is exactly what I needed in this moment. It's true for me right now, but just because it's true for you right now doesn't have to be true for you forever. So like you're saying, like the minute that you tap back into that intuition, if it's no longer true for you, you're allowed to change it. And this is the thing. There's no rules when it comes to any of this.
That's such an important thing because I think people like have one way that initially works for them and then they get tied to it. And I have to be doing this. And even if it doesn't feel the same or isn't as effective at a different point in their journey, like there's been times where I've needed stillness and I've needed meditation. And there's been times where I've needed to move. And there's been times where I've needed to travel. And there's been times I've needed to be like a freaking hermit in my little hole in my house. And so it doesn't have to be the same from week to week and month to month. Like you're allowed to change. And I think that's a really fantastic and important message for people to hear, especially in the midst of their comebacks and in like really coming back to who they're meant to be. I actually love when you first started talking, you were saying like, I just didn't feel like myself. And I think that is like the biggest red flag and indicator that you're ready for something more. And when I say comeback, like I don't want people to feel like this has to be like post, I call it a black hole moment, post a black hole moment, like post total failure, post breakup, post, job loss. And it can be, but there are also moments where things are going fantastic. And then you'll just feel like, something's not quite right or something's missing. And that's your soul just asking you to like keep coming back for more information. So I think this is all really fantastic and helpful. I'm so curious. I believe that every person who's found success, I think every person in general, but just in regards to this podcast, I think every person who's found success or alignment in what they're doing or that glow that I see in you, I believe that there's a story behind that got you there. And so I would love to hear a little bit about your comeback story if you're willing to share it.
I would love to share it. Absolutely. And I feel like there's two pivotal moments over the last few years that could qualify, if you will, as a comeback part of my story. And before I share any of it, I want to preface by saying, like, I feel like I am coming back almost every single day. And it's a good thing, And like you're saying, it can be this massive pivotal moment, which it kind of was for me. And it also doesn't necessarily have to be, it can be like a slow build. And so I've kind of had both. So the first time was back in 2018. I woke up one day, I was just so miserable. I was so unhappy. I used to be someone who was super gossipy, really judgmental, and always projecting my insecurities onto other people, and was very much like, well, this person is so pretty, so they must be a terrible human being. You know what I mean? Like just all kinds of like narratives. And I woke up one day and I was like, I do not like myself. Like, I don't like myself. Like, how could anybody else like me? I don't like myself. And I was complaining. And my husband, then boyfriend, then turned fiance, and then now husband, he said to me, if you're so miserable, why don't you just do something to change it? And I was like, what? I was like,
sounds like work.
I was like, sounds like work and sounds like not something you should be telling me right now. Just kidding. So I did. I was like, okay, and he's a pretty quiet guy. So the fact that he actually said something, I was like, okay, I got to make some changes here. Like, I can't live like this forever. So I did. So I went out on this journey. I tried to find all kinds of people that could help. And I ended up with this like more spiritual kind of like therapist, life coach person. She was really cool. I really liked working with her. And in that process, discovered there were so many key things within myself that I was fearful of. I had a lot of like deep-rooted shame and trauma and like all this stuff it was so buried that I never gave it the opportunity to come to light. And from that point, it was the end of 2018. I said to myself, okay, if I feel this way, there's got to be one other person in this entire world that feels this way too. So why don't I start a podcast? Nichole, I didn't have a social media following. I didn't have a business. Like I had nothing. Like I was literally Simona from wherever I lived. I worked in corporate. It was not a thing. Like I was not in this space that I am in now. And I just did it. I just did it because I wanted to, and it felt like the message was more powerful than not. And it's kind of like one of those things where, it's cliche, but you get to the end of your life and you're like, would I have regretted not starting that one thing? And I would have. So yeah, I just launched it. I launched the show, didn't know what I was doing. And every single week people tuned in. And I thought to myself, like, if I just help one person feel less alone, I feel like I've done my job. And it's been way more than that. It's been like hundreds of thousands of people that I've helped make their lives a little brighter, I guess, through the conversations we have and the guests that we have on the show now. It's been quite a journey. And that was my first come back home to myself. So that felt like my comeback home. And that was an amazing point in time. And it really launched my self-confidence, my belief in myself to be like, you know what, maybe there's more. And so I was doing life coaching at first. That's where I started. I did life coaching, and that evolved and evolved. And then, the world shut down and I lost my job and I started doing podcast production. And where I focus now is helping women get in touch with their voice and their own inner confidence, the exact same place that I was in, and help them share that message powerfully with all of the amazing people in their space, in their community, and their network. And then that was great. That was all great. Things were dandy. I got married. Like life was great. Like everything was good. And then it was literally the day after I got married, I completely did a 180. I was like, what is going on in my life? And not in the way of getting married, because I'm very happy that I did that. It was it was more so of I had taken all of this energy of all of the things that were going on in the world, and I channeled it into planning my wedding. And then when that was gone, I was left with, who am I? What am I doing? How did I get here? And so that catapulted a 1.5 year journey. So when people say do the work or whatever, it does not take overnight. It can, and it can also take a very long time. And so I sat in this space for a 1.5 years almost. It's only been the last few months that it's actually started to clear. And that felt like coming back to my power. So both had to happen at different times. And I know it'll happen again. We can talk again in a year from now. I'm sure this could be something else.
There's so much to unpack here.
I know.
It's so perfect though, because I think there's a couple of big awarenesses that I heard from you, right? Is that the recognition of I'm being judgmental, I'm hating people around me, I'm gossiping, I'm not a person that I want to be. That's not true for me. And I think one of the biggest steps in people's comeback is identifying the truth about where they're really at, and then being willing to change, whether that's somebody saying, hey, what if you change? What would that look like? Or if that's just that little tap saying, this isn't you, this isn't right. I think stepping back into a better, authentic version of yourself is a massive part of your comeback, is being willing to say, okay, I'm letting these pieces of me go because they're not serving me and they're not really authentically me, and finding and discovering and being willing to hire a life coach, hire a business coach, hire somebody, or if you don't have the money, the library is stacked with amazing writers. Yes. The YouTube is stacked with amazing information. You don't have to have money in your pocket to grow. You just don't. There's access to that. And I want to say that because I know a lot of people are like, well, I have limited resources, I can't do this. I'm like, do you spend time on any social media? Because you could be pouring that into self-development, and you could be pouring that into wanting to be inspired and to live better. So I love all that. Now, the other really important part of this is that once you find it, a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'm healed now. And I just call bullshit on that. Yes. I hate when people say, oh, I'm healed now. Good. Yeah. Let's see in a 1.5 years, honey. Tell me the secret. This is not how that works. And I would love for it to be a one and done situation, but we have so many layers of who we are and growth and of who we grow into. And, this is a new podcast and a new season in my life called Rock Your Comeback, because Rock Your Soul for me was a time period of my life and it's done. And I think that's cool because we have the power to love where we're at and then reinvent ourselves again. And the cool thing is we never have to wait for a time period where it's perfect, where we're going to go do it. It's just just that little tap on our inner door saying, what else you got? Like, is this still working? So I love that you heard that, because a lot of people get caught up in making these big life changes and then holding to them out of fear that, well, I did this and I made this jump and this is going well, but not being happy. And I love that you were willing to look at that and say, well, I've created all this stuff and it's going really well. And I know you're winning community awards and, all that great stuff, but is it still in alignment with me? And I think when we talk about like a comeback for me, that's like the first thing I think of is this in alignment with my growth? Is this in alignment with who I desire to be? And listening to all those internal cues along the way. So this is a fantastic story for everyone listening. I love this.
That was so beautiful. And what's really key in there is that it's never, first of all, never linear ever.
No.
Right. And the whole other piece of this is, we do things in life based off of what we were told we are supposed to and allowed to do. Okay. In order to make a change in your life, you need to dig deep within yourself and find that inner confidence within yourself, because nobody else is going to go and do that for you. Everybody told me to keep my corporate job. Everybody, everyone said it is too risky. It's too risky. It's too risky, until it wasn't anymore. You know what I mean? Until I lost that very safe corporate job. And this has been way more fulfilling on a mind, body, soul, spiritual, like every single level than I could have ever dreamt of. I am not someone who, I don't want to say this in like a way of like putting myself down, but I've never been someone who's been able to dream big. Okay. I'm not able to visualize things. I don't sit down and have visualization sessions. It's very difficult for me to like see things. I hear things, which makes so much sense because I'm like in the podcast space, like obviously. But I never gave myself the chance to, because I had so much fear and I had so much guilt and shame. And there was just so much trauma packed in there. Like I was telling this to a friend the other day. I was scared to get married because I thought, this is like a total left field, but like I was scared to get married because I thought that my husband was going to die the next day. Okay. Like just take that in.
Yeah.
That is based off of all of the past stuff. So how do you let yourself grow and dream and plan when your current state doesn't allow you to see further than what is in this current moment? You know what I mean? Like you have to find that awareness. And even if you have like that 1% of that awareness, just lean into it because it is worth it. And you might be fearful and you might like dip your toes and then step back and dip your toes and step back. But I promise you, and you know this for a fact, Nichole, like as soon as you start, you will never stop. You can't go back once you've come too far, like too far, quote unquote. You can't. It's impossible.
I look at versions of myself in the past and I just cringe because I know like I'll read like Facebook posts from 2009. Good Lord, who was friends with me? I'm so sorry.
Oh my God. I know.
Like, you just look back at parts of you and you're like, ooh, that was not the best version of me. But it takes it, like, it's a really cool thing to be willing to lean into that opportunity and that invitation. I think of it as an invitation to like your soul, of like asking you to just look for more. And I think you brought up a great point of like, how do you move through fear and shame or guilt, especially when you have a quote unquote, and I will always use quotes because I hate this term, a safe corporate job. There's nothing in this world that is safe. Nothing. It might be safe for right now, but they go through a hard time and they make 20 cuts and you're one of the 20, like it's not safe anymore. So if you're going to bet on anything, bet on yourself. I actually think Jim Carrey did like a huge commencement speech, if you can find it. And he says something along the lines of like, he wanted to be a comedian and his dad was like, I don't know, something that he ended up getting fired. And so his whole message was like, if you're going to bet on anything, bet on yourself. But I think when I actually really love that you brought up fear and shame, because I think that people get into what I call in my book, a survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, you're in this fear state that I'm so scared to do anything else. And what happens is you kind of activate this fight or flight mode in you. So if you're staying, you're fighting for this job. And it's this constant circular motion of going and doing the same thing every day because you're too scared to do anything different. But the cool thing is when we can remember, and that's what I love that you're talking about, that 1% of the time when we can remember, like we're creators of our experience. We get choice every single day of our life. We get choice. And when we remember that we're in control, we regulate our central nervous system. We like calm everything down. And then we can, and one of the really important things that you said is I can't visualize. a lot of people can't. And I think when people talk about visualizing, it's a little isolating sometimes. I am a feeler. Once in a while, I can see pictures in my head, but even when I do energy readings and energy sessions, I'm not seeing it. I'm saying I see it just because it makes everybody feel better.
Yeah.
But like if I'm talking about somebody's aura colors or whatever, I'm not seeing it. I feel like you're the color pink or yellow. Like, you know, like it's a whole different feeling. So for me, it's a feeling thing. For you, it's a hearing thing. You get those messages, and like being able to come out of survival mode and out of that fear mode is being able to decide you're a creator and follow whatever way your gut guides you. And that may look different. So I love that you brought that up, because I think a lot of people can't see their future or can't visualize it or can't do more than 6 months from now. I'm not somebody who can see, like when somebody asks me, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Shit if I know. I don't know.
Ask me 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to tell you I'd be here. Like,
no, like 5 years
idea.
ago, I lived in New York State with extreme depression. I mean, my business was doing well, but I was not well. And so like 5 years ago, I wasn't the same person as I am today. And I really, really fucking hope I won't be the same person I am now 5 years from now. I hope I'm like way cooler and way hotter. I don't know, you know, like there's so much potential. Obviously. But what advice would you give somebody who's navigating that fear space? Like what helped you move to a place where you started to take chances?
I love that question. You really need to zoom out. You need to zoom out and zoom out of the problem that you feel like you're in right now in this moment, because when you do that, when you're stuck in something, you're giving it all of your energy and you're giving it all of your power and you're giving it all of your attention. When you zoom out a little bit and you can see something from a bird's eye view, instead of, sitting in it in a significant way, it allows a little bit of space for a different thought. And so you're not zooming out to forget it. You're zooming out to try and shift it. And I think one of the biggest and most important things is to, always make sure that you're honoring the space that you're in, and then taking those little baby steps to the next thing that's going to help you in your journey. It's a hard thing to know exactly what that looks like for every single person, as you know. And for me, it was a lot of, okay, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to turn off whatever is going on. I listen to like a lot of those, like on YouTube, I'll put like binaural beats or whatever. And I just
love a binaural beat.
They are so good. Just listen and walk. And then that often leads you to like the next thing. So I actually did. I'm very lucky that I was able to, afford to go to therapy. I hired a therapist and we worked together, and there was a lot of things that I needed to like uncover. And then when I felt like I was like, okay, you know what, this is okay. I'm very aware now. I know how this presents in my life. Now I can take that back and not have to like, I'm not seeing a therapist right now, but when you have that moment in your life where you're like, okay, I've identified this particular thing. I know when it presents itself. Now I know what to do when it happens. And you just kind of like take a pause, just stop. You just stop the thought. It doesn't need to continue on. And I think for me, one of the hardest things, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit too, like one of the hardest things for me was trying to know like when I've quote unquote like healed from something. You know what I mean? I'm like, when does this feel like it's healed? That's been really hard for me to figure out, like, am I done with this? Am I hanging on to this old story just because I'm hanging on to it? Or is it something that still feels true for me now? And if it doesn't, can I let that go? And am I ready to let that go? And sometimes I'll just write things out and I just burn it. I'm done. I'm just done with it. So there's a lot of different ways. And it's also having the awareness of knowing, is this thing still true for me or not?
I love the self-questioning. That's like one of my favorite tools, because if we don't question what it is and why it's there and why it's still there, and if it needs to still be there, then it's just living there. And I'm a big advocate for energy doesn't disappear. It alchemizes and it transforms. So that energy will live inside you until you transform it. And the only way to really transform it is to decide it no longer serves you, and to literally physically remove it from your body through writing or through speech. So like journaling is my entire world. Like I say I am where I am because I journal, because I ask the hard questions, and because I always write a thank you note to the universe every morning. That's part of my journaling practice. But first I clear it all out by asking myself, like, I have a heaviness on my heart this morning. Like, what's that about? Like, what's in there that needs to come up? Is it ready to be released? And if it is, I say thank you and let it go. And if it's not, I ask if it's ready to shrink. And so even if it isn't ready to go, I think that every story we have created is a protective measure of our heart and our soul. So when we have these stories that, have served us for a long period of time and have like at least somewhat kept us safe from harm that we may have like developed as a kid that we needed to have, that it did serve a purpose. Like, I don't think anything is part of our personalities without really serving some level of purpose. So like, we have to say thank you. Like, that's such a beautiful part of ourselves and part of us. But asking those questions, Simona, that's beautiful, because we don't do that enough. We just commit to the story without wondering what the hell it's doing there, or if it needs to go. And I also think we give too much meaning into stories that return and decide that, oh shit, I'm not over it. Oh shit, like I guess this is sticking around for longer. When the reality is that sometimes it's just a little note from the universe of, are you still this person? And then you get to say, no, I'm not. And that's like the coolest part.
Exactly. And you can miss something in life, or a time period in life, or someone in life, and also have let it go with so much love. You know what I mean? Like, you can, that when those moments can come up, like I have friends that I've had falling outs with and all that over the years, and I miss them, and also I know that it's never going to be something ever again in my life. You know what I mean? So you just kind of like love it and you let it go, and that's okay. And I always tried to be a journaler, and I'm just not. I'm so not. But I do like to write. And I take my thoughts and I write them out as poetry, to be honest with you. I haven't published any of it. I'm going to this year.
You have to.
I'm going to. I will.
The intention is set.
I will. I've been setting that intention for so long. I'm like, oh, when's the time? No, it will come. It will come. Even in like, so like, if you talk about like your healing, journey or whatever, like I could be doing the dishes and I get something that comes to mind. Like I call them lines. Like, I don't know. I just like write lines, So I'll have like a line that comes to my mind and I'm like, I need to capture this moment and this exact feeling, this exact thing. And then I write it out. I like stop everything I'm doing. I take out my phone. I have like a notepad, like a little note thing on my phone. And I just write out exactly what that line is. And then I'm able to release it and let it go. Be like, okay, this feels done. It's very interesting. And it comes at like the most random times. And then it feels like that piece of my life. Like, I don't need to hang on to that anymore. Like, I don't have to worry about that anymore. It's very interesting.
So in the woo-woo space, we call those downloads.
Is that what that is?
Yeah. So usually like an
I'm
intuitive,
pretty woo-woo, but I didn't know that would be a download.
Yeah. I mean, anything that feels like it came from nowhere and that it's helping either you or someone else, like that's what I would refer to as a download.
Oh, wow.
Oh, you're magical.
Am I channeling?
Magical. Yeah. I mean, that's really what it is being like an open connection to the guidance from the other side. And so if we think of like channeling, like everybody makes it out to be something it's like not, and it has and that it's this creepy, scary thing. Like, we're all doing it anyway. We're just not labeling it. And I think it's just, we have to get over it. Like, can we like as a society, just like get over it being weird? Like, everybody has an intuition. Everybody's intuition speaks to them differently. And intuitive downloads, that sudden aha moment, that sudden, like, oh, this is what I needed to let this go. That sudden, like, oh, I need to write this down, or that sudden pull or push to try something, go somewhere, meet somebody, like all of that for me, that's intuition. And that's happening for everybody. It's just, I love that yours speaks to you in such a fun, cool way, because I think that's going to help somebody who's listening, because somebody who's listening is like, well, I don't really get, like, I don't really feel like I have a gut feeling. Like, for me, my intuition is not gut feeling. I'm actually like human design wise, I don't have that in my human design either. Like, I don't experience that same gut feeling.
Are you an emotional authority in human design?
I'm a splenic authority.
Oh,
It's annoying. But yeah, guys, if you have any interest in human design, I will speak to that all day. And because I think it's a really, really powerful way to know yourself and to just know how you function with other people. But it also tells you how your intuition speaks to you. Do you have an emotional authority?
I do.
Yeah. So
I never get gut feelings. Like, no, for me, it's like a full body yes, like it's an emotion, like it's like so learning how your intuition speaks to you so that you can hear the guidance is essential. I think an essential part of your comeback, and I'll preach that all day, because I think that's really what that means, is coming back to the ability to trust yourself enough to make decisions and be in alignment with you. So like, love that you brought that up. I think this conversation is going to be so helpful for so many people. Like, I'm obsessed. This was perfect. I'm so excited. That makes me so happy. I'm so grateful to be on here with you. I love everything that you do. You are such a bright light, and I'm just so grateful to be in your space so much. Thank you.
Before we wrap up today, do you have any last, like, just advice from your heart for anybody who is anywhere in the comeback process that you feel like may help them get to their next space?
So I'll share something that this is how I actually close out every episode on my podcast, my Happiness Happens podcast. I've been saying it for more than 3 years, and it's become a way of like life for me. And the phrase is happiness happens when you're least expecting it. And I think we put so many conditions on our happiness, on our joy, on our fulfillment, on our, jobs, our purpose and mission in life. And I think when we approach everything we do from a place of service to ourselves and also a place of service to others, you can't serve other people unless you're serving yourself too. And so when you remember that happiness really does happen when you're least expecting it, it reminds you to just sit in those little moments of joy and to sit in those moments of discomfort and fear and pain and shame and trauma and triggers, because all of those are what equal out to inner peace. And that's how I define happiness, is through inner peace. You can't have happiness unless you have inner peace. So that would be my advice, is to just always remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.
That's so beautiful. I'm a huge advocate for romanticizing your life. And if you want it to feel special, you get to make it special, and you get to make it special through all the different ways. And that doesn't mean you don't have hard moments or hard times. It just means you're willing to find the joy in the small moments, in the in-betweens. And I know people are going to want to connect with you. So how can people connect with you, work with you, reach out to you?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me on my Instagram is Simona with 2_ Costantini. My website is simonaconstantini.com. I'm on TikTok for my Happiness Happens podcast. That's literally the handle on TikTok, and Simona with 2_ Costantini on TikTok as well. And you can find my podcast at Happiness Happens Podcast on Instagram as well. And yeah, but if you go to my website, you can find all of the things. It's all interconnected. Once you're in the web, that's it.
You're there. You're
there.
right.
Exactly.
And I will link every link that she just mentioned in the bio to this podcast, so you can easily access it and find her, because she, like I said, I met her and I was like, bright light. I have to know her. And I know you guys are going to feel the same way. So make sure you work with her. And if you're in the business of wanting to start up a podcast, she has a very cool offer, Podcast in a Box, which helps you. And it sounds like gives you all the resources to get going in the right direction with that.
Yes. So that product specifically is for people who have podcasts already. So it's essentially my entire system and process when managing your show. And I also have an online course that helps you takes you through the entire process of starting, launching, monetizing, and, creating your show. So 2 separate products, but they're both amazing.
You can use your intuition to decide which one is for you. How's that?
That sounds wonderful. I love that.
I'm so grateful for you. Thank you again for jumping in on this podcast today. And I'm grateful for you.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for you too. Thanks for having me.